This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. You can find all the cards in this video in their store by using the links in the description below. Hi everyone, I'm Neetsahone, and it's time for another MTG Top 10, the series where I rank cards based on their historical performance and Magic's highest level of competition. Today, we're looking at elephants. Elephant is one of Magic's oldest creature types. War Mammoth in Alpha has been errata to have the creature type, and the first time it actually appeared on a card was on War Elephant from Arabian Nights, which was Magic's first expansion. While elephants aren't a creature type that has received a ton of support over the years, they do tend to show up in small numbers in most sets. Sometimes they resemble the elephants of our own world, other times they are a humanoid race, as seen on Unyielding Gatekeeper from Murders at Karlov Manor. To be eligible for this list, a card had to have either the elephant creature type or be able to make an elephant creature token. In all, there were 90 cards eligible, and in this video we'll look at the 10 that have left the biggest impact on competitive Magic. Before we get started, here's a quick reminder on how I score cards in these videos. A first tier top 8 is worth 2 points, this includes events like Pro Tours, and a second tier top 8 is worth 1 point. This includes events like regional championships. Alright, let's take a look at the top 10 elephants in Magic. Starting with Rogue Elephant at number 10. For 1 green mana, this elephant is a 3/3, and when it enters the battlefield you have to sacrifice it unless you sacrifice a forest. Obviously, those are some way above rate stats even today, and they were certainly worth the downside back in the 1990s. It was played in mono green aggro decks in standard and extended between 1997 and 1999, and that was a deck that looked to take advantage of beefy green stat lines. The deck also used Harvest Worm, which helped mitigate the downside of giving up that forest for your elephant. This elephant hasn't gained any points since 1999, and it's likely to fall off the list in the future. At number 9, it's Elephant Guide. For 2 generic and a green, this aura gives the enchanted creature +3/+3, and when the enchanted creature is put into a graveyard, you get a 3/3 elephant token. Oftentimes, auras are too dangerous to play, because if your opponent kills your creature, you had all of your eggs in one basket and you fall really far behind. Elephant Guy doesn't have that problem, because if your opponent does kill your buffed creature eventually, you're left with a pretty formidable token. And if they don't kill it, they're probably dealing with a huge creature. It was played in red-green aggro decks while it was in standard, and more recently it's seen play in Pauper mono-green aggro. While the original printing wasn't common, it did get a common reprint in Eternal Masters, making it legal in that format where only commons are legal. At number 8, it's Greenbelt Rampager. This elephant costs only 1 green mana, and it's even more efficient than Rogue Elephant because it's a 3/4. Of course, it comes with a downside, although it isn't entirely downside either. When it enters the battlefield, you have to pay 2 energy, and if you can't, it returns to your hand and makes an energy. In other words, if you have no other energy stuff going on, the Rampager is effectively a 3 mana 3/4 that you pay for in installments. That's not a terrible card, and of course, the decks it was played in had more energy stuff going on. This means that they could make use of the energy the Rampager produces, and more frequently just have the energy around to pay the cost right away. The Rampager hasn't gained any points since rotating out of standard. At number 7, it's Terastodon. It's a 9/9 that costs 6 generic and 2 green, and when it enters the battlefield you can destroy up to 3 target non-creature permanents, and for each permanent destroyed that way, its controller gets a 3/3 elephant. In other words, you can use Terastodon to get rid of problem opposing permanents and or sacrifice some of your own stuff to give yourself elephants. Notably, it can even hit lands. All of that's pretty great, although the 8 mana Terastodon demands from you is no small thing, so you need a very particular deck to get Terastodon going. As a result, it's seen significant multi-format success, but it's never really gone wild in any format either. In Standard, it found some success in ramp decks, in Extended it was cheated into play with Hypergenesis. In Modern, it's been played in big mana decks as well as reanimation decks, and most recently, Indomitable Creativity. In Legacy, it's been used in Sneak and Show, decks which use Show and Tell and Sneak Attack to put it into play, as well as in that format's Reanimator decks, and in Vintage, sometimes it shows up in Oath of Druids decks. It's going to keep gaining points at a modest pace, and that will probably be enough for it to maintain a spot on this list. At number 6, it's Oliphant. For 5 generic and a red, this elephant is a 6/4 trampler that gives +2/+0 and trample to another creature you control when it enters the battlefield. It also has mountain cycling for 1 generic mana, which means you can pay that cost and discard it to search up a mountain and put it into your hand. Because it's from the Lord of the Rings set, that means it's not legal in Standard or Pioneer. While this is certainly not an efficient creature when you cast it, the upside of 1 mana land cycling has proven to be quite impressive in multiple formats, with most of the cards from this cycle seeing play somewhere. It's found most of its success in Modern Living Index, which are all about cycling away big ol' creatures and then casting Living End to reanimate them all while destroying all of your opponent's creatures in play. Oliphant is one of the scarier creatures that you can do this with, as a 6/4 trampler can end the game in a hurry with an empty board. It's going to keep seeing play in Modern, and it isn't out of the question for it to gain more points in Legacy either. It's likely to move up the list going forward. At number 5, it's Loxodon Smer, the first Loxodon we've had on the list. This is the name for the humanoid elephants that have appeared on multiple planes. The Smer is a 4/4 for 1 generic, a green and a white, can't be countered, and if your opponent makes you discard it, you get to stick it right on the battlefield. Obviously, this has above rate stats and it comes with some relevant upside. The Smer was played in Modern during the days of Liliana of the Veil's dominance, and the Smer had incredible upside against her, since you got to choose what you discarded to her +1. It was nice to have a card that really hated on one of the most played cards in the format that also happened to be a 3 mana 4/4 that was perfectly playable in your main deck anyway. In addition to being a fixture in Modern for the first few years of the format, the Smer was also played in Standard Selesnya aggro decks. Unfortunately for the Smer, its power has really been outstripped in Modern in recent years, and it's barely seeing any play in Pioneer either, so it's likely to slip down the list in the future. At number 4, it's Loxodon Higher Arc. For 2 generic, a green and a white, it's a 4/4 that gains you 4 life when it enters the battlefield, and you can also pay a green and a white and sacrifice it to regenerate all of your creatures. If you're in a more mid-range or controlling deck, its size and the life gain can help you stabilize, and if you're an aggro deck playing it at the top of your curve, its ability provides the extra utility of saving your board from a sweeper. Its usefulness in multiple archetypes led to it seeing some significant play in Block Standard and Extended. It's also seen a tiny bit of play in Modern and Legacy toolbox decks, which can easily tutor up singleton creatures, and the Higher Arc in the right situation can be especially nice. Despite all that success, it's only gained 2 points since 2009, and hasn't gained a single point since 2014. Still, it has a high enough score that it should be on this list for the foreseeable future. At number 3, it's Call of the Herd. For 2 generic and a green, this sorcery makes a 3/3 elephant token. It also has flashback for 3 generic and a green, which means if it's in your graveyard, you can pay that cost and exile it to cast it again. In other words, this one card can give you 2 3/3s, which is pretty nice, even if it's not the most efficient deal in the world. It's also quite nice to have one of these stashed away in your graveyard against an opponent you know is playing board sweepers, as it can give you a backup plan and a way to rebuild your board even if you're out of cards in hand. Call of the Herd had success in aggro decks in Block Standard and Extended. While it was originally printed in Odyssey, it also got a time-shifted reprint, giving it 2 separate runs in all 3 of those formats. In Standard, it was played in blue-green aggro decks the first time around. These decks had a prominent graveyard sub-theme, and discarding or milling the call still meant you could get value out of it. Its second time through Standard, it was played in red-green aggro. In Extended, it saw play in Naya aggro decks, as well as in Oath of Druids decks. It worked well in Oath decks because it gave you a way to get a creature in play if you really had to, but it wouldn't get in way of your Oath searching up your win condition or combo pieces. While it had lots of success between 2001 and 2007, Call of the Herd hasn't seen any play since then. At number 2, it's Zandu Mammoth. For 1 generic and 2 green, it's a 3/3, and whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. In other words, it's often attacking as a 5/5 on your turn and sometimes as a 7/7. And the upside doesn't end there because it's a modal double-faced card. This means that it has another side, and you can choose to play it that way if you want to. The other side is Zandu Valley, a land that enters tapped and can be tapped for green mana. While the land side is obviously worse than a basic forest, the fact that this is a creature that can be a land when you really need one is a pretty big deal. The Mammoth has been played in mono-green aggro decks in Standard and Pioneer. While it's possible for it to gain more points in Pioneer in the future, it has been several months since its last top 8. And at number 1, it's Venerated Loxodon. For 4 generic and a white, this elephant is a 4/4 with Convoke, which means you can tap your creatures to help pay for the spell, with each one that you tap paying for 1 generic or 1 mana of that creature's color. And then when the Loxodon enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on each creature that convoked it. In other words, you can potentially cast a Loxodon for no mana at all while buffing your entire board. It was played in standard white weenie decks, which could quickly populate the board and get the Loxodon down very early. More recently, it's been played in Boros Convoke decks in both Pioneer and Modern, which respond as a result of the printing of Knight Errant of Eos, a second incredibly powerful Convoke creature that paid you off for tapping things to cast it. While it doesn't grow your creatures, it does grab more of them for you, so obviously Venerated Loxodon and the Knight Errant are best friends, as they both love having as many small creatures around as possible. Venerated Loxodon is well positioned to keep gaining points going forward, and it's likely to remain at number 1 on this list for the foreseeable future. So, those are the top 10 elephants in Magic. Looking to build an elephant deck? Check out the description, where you can find a direct Card Kingdom link for each card that appeared in this video. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it to help increase its reach. If you want to make sure you catch future videos, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. If you want to catch up on past MTG top 10s, including many more that look at a specific creature type, you should see a playlist on your screen shortly. Thanks for watching.